Thanks so much. Thank you everybody for coming. Okay, thank you. So first I just wanted to note that this program is being funded by the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture through a grant that we have through the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Center. So there we go. So just wanted to highlight a couple things. There's a few reasons that we put this program together and why we're kind of trying to, well, my intention was to focus the discussion around specialty crops. Just primarily because you can see from this illustration here that farms in Massachusetts grow a lot of specialty crops, which I thought this was a kind of impressive map. What this map is showing is the share of farms in the counties and those respective counties and their relative shares of specialty crops that they grow in that county. So it's not relative to each other. Like we're not growing the volume of specialty crops that California is, but you can see that the darker the green, the more focused those farms are on specialty crops. In Massachusetts, it's all that dark green color. And then the other figure here shows the percentage of crop insurance liabilities by crop type. And you can't read that closely, but I'll tell you that that big blue section and the big orange section at the bottom are corn and soybeans. So those are the most highly, the biggest share of the liabilities for crop insurance. That red section right above those two is specialty crops, and you can see that that's growing, but it's still only, it's 14% about of the total share of nationally, especially of crop insurance liabilities. And then the sort of fact sheet, which I pulled this from a Farm Bureau information, a fact sheet, that while 14% of the crop insurance liabilities go to specialty crops, the dollar value of specialty crops is about 21% of all the crops grown in the US. So just sort of highlights that there's a mismatch between the value of the crops and how well they're being protected by this system. And then I think Kevin will get into this a little bit more about what policies are available in Massachusetts. But here's just a snapshot of the indemnities that were paid or payments made to the producers from the 2024 crop year. You probably can't read this too well, but I'll highlight that apples, which are at the top, cranberries, fresh market sweet corn are some of the larger, the most, I guess, highly indemnified specialty crops for which there are payments made. And then these two that I've highlighted here are the micro farm revenue protection and whole farm revenue protection policies, which Kevin will talk about in some more detail. And just to say, so there are some policies in Massachusetts in these two programs that are designed to cover really more highly diverse farms, and where they can kind of cover all of the commodities that that farm produces under the same policy. And while we do have some policies, so there are no payments made just in the 2024 crop year. So those are the two policies out of all of these ones that are available in Massachusetts that are really designed for those highly diverse specialty crop farms. And why are we talking about this now, even among folks who don't really have a history of using these programs? As I said, a lot of specialty crop farms are highly diversified, and while diversification, excuse me, is an important way that farms can manage the risk of crop loss, changes to the climate in the Northeast, which are kind of highlighted in these slides, which includes, changes in temperature, so tending toward hotter temperatures overall, and then to the right, tending toward changes in very heavy precipitation events. So times when there's risk of flooding is increasing as we sort of move into this new climate. So crop or even market diversification becomes less of a strategy when you've lost all of your crops. So we have experienced at Extension greater interest among sort of smaller, more diverse farms in using some of these federally subsidized policies to protect their crop, and for even producers who never thought it was applicable to their farm or usable for their farm, folks are really looking for ways to protect their crops and their businesses. And I will say that specialty crops have been in the news lately. So if you do a news search, some of these headlines are just from the last couple of months. Specialty crop growers are pushing for aid after the U.S. House did leave some farmers, specialty crop farmers and others, out of those, trying to remember the name of the aid package now. but getting left out of some economic aid packages that have come out recently. And there was a meeting of the United States House of Representatives has an agriculture committee, and they met last fall to discuss just the state of specialty crops in the country, and sort of acknowledged generally within that meeting that there really is a need for a different policy approach when it comes to protecting specialty crops. I'm just going to read there was some quotes from that meeting, some folks who testified. There was a nursery grower who testified and said that crop insurance programs that are in place to cover catastrophic and nature-related events rarely help him due to his extreme crop diversity. And that theme was echoed by others throughout the hearing. So it is something that we're hearing, that specialty crop producers are either not making full use of some of these policies, or for one reason or another, or that they're not matching with what their needs are. There was another grower in that hearing that noted that only 5% of Farm Bill funding goes to specialty crop producers. So I think, again, there's this mismatch between the value of the crops that folks are producing, and specialty crops, I'll backtrack in case folks aren't aware, are basically all the kind of fruits and vegetables, including, and also nursery crops that we grow. So the sort of non-commodity crops is what I'm talking about when I say specialty crops. And then back in January, I'm not sure if one of these headlines highlights it, but back in January, there were a group of specialty crop trade groups. I think it was initiated by the Farm Bureau Federation, but there were several trade groups that signed on to a letter that they sent to Congress, basically urging, it was the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program was what I was trying to remember, urging support through that program or others to support specialty crop producers. And then just one last highlight that I saw in the news, the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, and we have some representatives of that department in the room. They amended their policy recommendation related to specialty crops from, again, I'm going to read this. It used to just say what they supported was additional crop insurance resources for specialty crop farmers. And in their most recent thing, I think this was just last week that they made this amendment, that their recommendation was to support efforts to ensure that federal risk management programs provide crop insurance products that meet the needs of specialty crop producers. Priority should be given to affordable products that offer a payout rate that is advantageous enough to attract participation from small, diversified farms, and a process that is not overly burdensome for those producers. So really trying to drill down what is the issue when it comes to growers needing that kind of federal support or that kind of just economic support from anywhere, and still not feeling like these policies, for whatever reason, are right for them. So I'm happy that Winton is here from our State Department of Agriculture to talk about the state's role in all of this. I will highlight that department and our dispersed, it was at $20 million to over 300 farms in 2023 after we had the late freeze and then all of that flooding that happened in 2023. So clearly the state has a role, and that is why we invited that department to come be a part of this conversation. Okay. So this is just the last thing I wanted to highlight. This is a report that just came out. This is the report of the Special Legislative Commission on Agriculture in the 21st Century, which you can access through this QR code, if I move that thing out of the way. There you go, now you can access it if you wish. So this commission was co-chaired by Representative Kate Hogan and Senator Joe Comerford in the state, and then there were several other people on the committee to discuss these recommendations. That commission included Clay, who's in the room here, and Winton, as well as other representatives of other state agencies and agricultural groups. So it identified a few different things. Identified climate change and natural disasters as one of its three, still it's right from you, Clem, one of its three critical areas for recommendations. And one of the many recommendations that it made was a way to find, a way to permanently fund the New Massachusetts Disaster Relief and Resiliency Fund, which I don't know if you'll get into, Winton, but I mentioned that here, which is a fund that was created after that, after the flood, and you would know more about it than me, but I guess it exists. There is a permanent disaster relief fund, but I think we're still looking for a mechanism to permanently fund that. The commission also made some recommendations around crop insurance. And again, I'll say, just to kind of frame this conversation, I'll say exactly what's in this report relative to crop insurance, that they recommend supporting federal and private insurance options that would better serve the full range of Massachusetts farmers, and more specifically, it says that they support policies that advocate to federal. They support advocating to federal delegation for changes to policy, for exploring opportunities for state underwriting policies, providing a tax incentive to farmers who obtain crop insurance, or using state funding to pay a portion of crop insurance premiums. So those were just some ideas I think that came out of that discussion in that commission. And those are some of the things that I sort of invite discussion in this room and online about is, if these things aren't working, how can they work better, basically. Pass this over to you. Sorry, it's a little clammy.
You're good.
Thank
You're
you.
good. Thank you very much, Lisa. Again, Kevin Wooten, Director for USDA Risk Management Agency, out of the Raleigh office. You can see, just kind of wanted to give you a frame of reference for how we're set up. We've got 10 regional offices in the country. They call it the Raleigh Regional Office because prior to COVID, when everybody was in a bricks and mortar, the headquarters for my staff, or the staff that I inherited, was really physically located in Raleigh, North Carolina. Obviously, we go all the way up to Maine. The Raleigh Regional Office, obviously the largest regional office in the country, with covering 14 states, but we're also by far the most agronomically diverse, which I'm really proud of. But we also know that comes with challenges, right? And the types of crops and the amount of specialty crops and the marketing and all that, it comes with challenges that you know, I'm excited and look forward to working through to try to address things as we move along. A couple of comments out of, you mentioned the work that the commission had done and all that, and you mentioned the private products and federal products and all that. I think what's really unique, and I spent 22 years almost with FSA as a county director and a district director. And so if you're used to going to the FSA office, you go to that counter and you get the service right there. It's local, right? So for crop insurance, given the federal side or the public side, which is RMA, USDA, you know, the local side are the agents, and we've got agents in the room here. And without that delivery system, this thing just wouldn't work. So I have enjoyed being able to meet with some of the agents up here and work with them and get to know them, because it takes all of us on the federal side and you guys as agents on the private side on the ground meeting with the producers to get these products out there. I hope I hit the right button here. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Let's hit the other one. So my regional office staff, this is kind of how we're set up. Retirements and all have taken our toll on us over the last 12 months. I've got 2 senior specialists, and then I've got my deputy, Will Barnes, who some of you have known, met, talked to over the years. Shannon Olive, our senior risk management specialist, is the one that really focuses on specialty crops. So she's the one she's dealt with that almost her entire career, 15 years. And then I've got 2 specialists, Tanya Harris and I'm going to pronounce her last name wrong, Sarah Forner. I think I've got that right. They handle specialty crops with Shannon. The unique thing about the way we're set up now, and we're completely remote, Sarah actually lives just across the line in Connecticut and previously worked for Connecticut Farm Service Agency. So I feel like we're really blessed to have a local connection up here with somebody that has also worked in FSA, but is now with RMA and is up here more local to and accessible to you guys. So just kind of a 30,000 foot view of Massachusetts crop insurance and history for the last 5 years. You can kind of see what producer premiums have been, how many policies we've had in effect, what acres those cover. You can see in 21 and 23, I couldn't tell you exactly what the cause of loss was that spiked like that. I would access, and Colleen, you're probably right. It's probably excessive moisture is probably what caused it. If you look back over 15 years, with the exception of 21 and 23, the loss ratio over the last 15 years up here has been at or below 1. It's been pretty good. So that's a good thing, right? That those loss ratios are in line, and obviously, hopefully, it means you've had good years and been able to produce a crop and sell a crop, and really not necessarily needed to rely on insurance and issues. But obviously, you can see what it means to producers up here whenever it's needed. The slide you showed just a second ago, Lisa, that had the crops and indemnities up, that was a 24. So we literally just, those are the state profiles. We do those state profiles. We just literally finished the 25 state profile, and it's getting ready to be published. So for those of you that want to go online and take a look at what 25 looked like, we're getting ready to publish that data. So that'll be, those of you that find that kind of stuff interesting, I would encourage you to take a look at it. So program crops, and when we talk about programs and program counties, these are the crops that have a program somewhere in the state of Massachusetts. Now, I will say this list is not all inclusive, obviously. We know that there are way more things and crops grown up here than what are here. And so if you don't see something you're growing, you're interested in crop insurance, and I've got this link for the agent locator and all that later. Reach out to your agent, crop insurance agent, ask about it. I'll talk about written agreements in just a second, and that's always a possibility. But I think it's important to note that these crops are for sure somewhere in the state of Massachusetts have a program, have what we call a base or a regular NPCI policy that is available for purchase. So I wanted to highlight just a couple of things that RMA has done over the last few years. The most recent one I'll mention is expansion of peppers into Massachusetts. We literally have just done that. It is a dollar plan. It is either the lesser of the value of the crop or the cost of production. And, you know, we're looking, honestly, I was talking with Colleen earlier, because it's the first year, you know, those of you that have got peppers, please take a look at it, talk with your agent about it. We would really like some feedback on it. You know, it's like anything else that's new or a new product. You know, we don't know what needs to be fixed or changed until we put something out there and we go from there with it. But it took about 6 or 8 months or a little longer to get that to fruition. We had to make some changes to the actual policy and change some dates to allow it. But we're pleased it's up here. It's another opportunity to take a look at for the guys up here that are growing peppers. Obviously, we know apples is big all over the Northeast up here. Updating the pricing option on the apples to either take the minimum value option or take a higher price. If that was done prior to me coming in, which obviously was an improvement to the apple policy. The biggest change that has been made to apples since I came on board was being able to use the appraisal to be able to keep fresh market pricing in the policy. The one in 4, as I heard it referred to a lot, and I would have to ask every time, what in the world does that mean? Y'all got to explain this to me. But I think it's good. It's allowing the producer to keep that fresh market price, which obviously is a higher price. And we know it's particularly important up here in the Northeast in this region because so much of what is sold is done through direct market. So a positive change in my eyes. I hope that it is on the ground a popular option, a move in the right direction. Let me skip to the bottom. I'll talk about aquaculture first. I know I don't know if anybody in here is messing with oysters in particular, but we piloted an aquaculture policy all the way across the country. And obviously we put it in there's 2 states, 2 counties here in Massachusetts that have got it. It's getting a lot of popularity. The participation isn't exactly where we want it, but there is generating a lot of interest. We're getting a lot of phone calls about it. So, you know, I guess the take home message is, you know, we're not just corn, beans and wheat. You know, we're trying to look to do things for aquaculture. We're trying to look to do things, specialty crops. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. I mentioned the written agreements earlier, and it had to do with if your crop wasn't or crops weren't on that list, go to your agent, contact an agent, and ask about being able to write a written agreement. So if you're in a county that doesn't have that crop, doesn't have that program in the county, as long as it exists somewhere, then we can consider looking at writing a written agreement. Those are written, they run directly through our office, through the regional office. And then we're going to make a decision on approving or disapproving. And it goes back out through the agent to the producer or whatever. And the producer's got, I think he's got 15 days, I believe it is, to make the decision on to take the insurance. For me, particularly up here, specialty crops, you know, it goes back to what we call experience, right? Everything we do is driven on data, right? Acres, yields, pricing, all of that. And so if there's something being grown up here that we don't have or we're not aware of, and we've got it somewhere else, and we're able to write that written agreement and build some experience, that's data for us. That's data for us to be able to say and talk with the agents, talk with grower organizations, work with extension, all in a state, to be able to look at, hey, is there a need for a product, or is there a need to expand that program for that crop into the neighboring county or into the neighboring region, or maybe even into the neighboring state. So again, if you've got something that you're interested in insuring, don't know if it's available, go to your agent, find an agent, and ask about a written agreement. Let me talk briefly about whole farm. Lisa mentioned whole farm, very, very high level, but it was developed. You know, it's a revenue-based insurance. Last year in Massachusetts, we had a total of 7 whole farm policies in effect. There was 4 whole farm and 3 micro farm available. The total liability on those was about $3 million. Obviously, you know, we're not done with the year yet to know what if any of it's gonna pay out, but just kind of see how it's set up. It's based off the Schedule F. Obviously, there's whole farm was first, and one of the agents in the room can tell me 15 years ago. It's been a while since it was incepted.
Yeah, well, it's 2015 whole farm.
Yeah, yeah. So whole farm was first, fairly high, obviously limit on gross revenue there. Micro farm much newer than whole farm. Than whole farm was for obviously a much lower income level, smaller operations, niche operations, that kind of stuff. Some application information, some of the required forms. You see the deadlines for them. I don't know, it might all be March 31 up.
Yeah, whole farm is March 15.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a slide taken out, I think out of North Carolina. The take home message with the dates are, and Colleen and I were having this conversation earlier. Don't wait till the last minute if you're interested in it. There is some paperwork to be gathered and done, and it does take a little bit of legwork. So if you're interested in it, please start early. Taking a look at it. Obviously the difference in the tax year records between whole farm and micro farm is a little different. The one thing that I really wanted to talk about with regard to either one of these programs deals with the records. by and large, as I've talked about micro farm and whole farm for the last year, particularly up here in the Northeast, one of the largest pain points I've heard is the records. And it's because of, the way you guys sell up here in the direct market, and it's harder to do. If you happen to be the producer that wholesales things, even on part of your operation, it's a little easier. These are the kinds of things that we would need in a verifiable record for either product. For the guys that are direct marketing, again, just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that are in here that would need to be in a record to be considered acceptable or verifiable. Again, this is one of these things that I'll take all the feedback I can get on this product as you as producers are looking at it, you as agents are working with it, because we have a whole farm team at the national office level. That's all they do, and they're looking at things annually to try to do things different, make improvements, what have you, on those particular products. A couple of resources, specifically the whole farm. The fact sheets are pretty good for both of them. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy to understand. USDA has also created a link for an agent listing of folks that have written micro farm, whole farm in your particular area that you could reach out to if you don't already have an agent. So I would encourage you to do that if you're interested in that and not quite sure who to get in touch with. And then a couple of other resources. Lisa mentioned the agent locator. Certainly use that. And then there's also a cost estimator on there. It's not going to get it right down to the penny. It's not going to be exact, but it does give you a pretty good idea. I have actually used it in the office, working on a couple of things for some double crop soybeans down on the Delmarva in the Mid-Atlantic, and it does a pretty good job. It does a pretty good job of estimating. Let me talk looking forward. I got 2 slides about some of the things that have been done and we're working on. Obviously, everybody's heard about the One Big Beautiful Bill or the One Big Beautiful Act. And so there were some things that came out of that were specific to RMA, specific to crop insurance. This is probably one of the larger things that with beginning farmer and who qualifies and how that works. Prior to this, a beginning farmer or rancher was 5 years. It's now 10 years. So we doubled the length of time that a producer qualifies as a beginning farmer. And the additional subsidy on top of what the producer received was 10% for all years. And so in addition to that base 10% additional premium, you can see what they did for the first, essentially 5 years or 4 years of the 10, where they added just a little bit more, premium subsidy assistance on it. So always good. The other thing with premium subsidy, not related to beginning farmers and ranchers, they increased the support a little bit. Anything that has 55 to 79% as far as election, they bumped that, I think, about 5% from what it had been. And then anything 80% above, it was a 3% increase in the amount of subsidy support to the producer. So that's all helpful, right? It's all hopefully a few additional dollars that stay in the producer's pocket. The other thing that they did, and it runs into FSA, if all of you will remember, or definitely the agents in the room will remember, when they rolled out the 2014 Farm Bill, and it went from, I don't even remember what we were on, direct and counter-cyclical, maybe we went to ag risk coverage and we went to price loss coverage. there was that prohibition between ARC, or Ag Risk, and supplemental coverage, right? SCO that we're familiar with. So you couldn't elect SCO if you elected ARC in the FSA office. So one of the changes is they've done away with that prohibition. They've done away with that prohibition going forward. So if you've got base crops on farm serial numbers and you're got it in the ARC program, but you're interested in SCO now, you're able to have that as part of your crop insurance selections going forward, which I think is good. I know for us, when I was on the FSA side in North Carolina, it was always we always had to make sure that we knew what elections a producer had made on the crop insurance side, and so that we didn't mess anything up, and they end up not being eligible for something they had paid for because they had ARC on a farm or a crop. So it's a good change that came out of that. And I was glad to see that. Let me talk a little bit about most recently what is going on with RMA specific to specialty crops. Last fall, RMA held about six or seven roundtables across the country, and we met specifically with agents. The one we held up here was in Hadley, Massachusetts, and we had several agents sit around the table with myself, with Will, my deputy, with folks from the national office, and basically our administrator, Pat Swanson, and Secretary Rollins, for that matter of fact. They made a special emphasis on specialty crops, right? To try to develop, improve, expand products that are useful to specialty crop growers. And it is, I can assure you, it is not lost on them that the Northeast is unique, not only in the number of crops grown, but with the way that they're sold in the direct market and farmers markets and those kinds of things. They understand that. So those were kind of the three things that we talked about. You know, what are the challenges? What products are used? You know, and then what opportunities do we have to make program expansions or new programs or improvements to current programs? I talked about whole farm very briefly, but by and large, that was the one topic that was talked about across the entire country. It didn't care whether it was here or it was in California. And some of the conversation was, man, it works really well, right? I'm in an area that's specialty crops, but it's wholesale stuff, right? It's got easily verifiable records. It rolls. And then there's other areas, not just here, that it doesn't work as well. So I know that's going to be a big focus and conversation about that because it was kind of a uniform topic across all regions. Generalized expansion of specialty crops, we heard that in a lot of places. We heard it up here for sure. And we also, you know, going back to the data, going back to written agreements and all those kinds of things are what get us to the point that we can expand and bring in new programs, bring in new crops. And then, you know, developing new specialty crop products. That's the piece that's got the longer runway, right? When we're having to develop something from scratch, that's got the longer runway. That's not a crop year. Sometimes that's not even 2 crop years. It might be longer than that. But we know that need is out there. We know that exists. So from those meetings and from all those takeaways, where are we? Kind of what's the next steps? Just in the last 3 weeks, all of the input from 6, 7 meetings got put together, kind of bucketed, itemized. The regional offices have looked through them and to decide, you know, what are the things, and again, nationwide, what are the things that we can do fairly quickly? What are the things that may take some time? And then what are the things like new products that take longer? And so We sent all of that back. The national office folks, the subject matter experts that deal with specialty crops have got that. And so they're doing that. We're working through this analysis and determining, what are the things we can do to move forward with specifically to specialty crops. So, I'm excited about the opportunities of what comes out of that and what we're able to do for specialty crops in general, but more importantly, because I know, this is my region, our region. I'm really excited to see what we're able to get done and make some changes, some new things as we move through the next 2 or 3. Sounds like a long time when I say 2 or 3 crop years, but sometimes that may be what it takes. But I'm excited about trying to get the ball rolling on some things that have been needed or needing to have been improved for risk management tools up here for you guys as growers. So I'll just end with this is me. This is my direct contact information. That first email address is the main mailbox. Feel free to shoot something to the main mailbox if you like. One of our seniors and then my deputy, Will Barnes, he monitors that. Direct emails, both of those phone numbers are my direct phone numbers. Feel free to reach out anytime. I've told several in the room today. I grew up in North Carolina. I grew up on a tobacco and row crop operation. We farmed about 3,500 acres total between corn, soybeans, wheat, tobacco. I can talk about that all day long. I'm very appreciative, Lisa, you asked me to come up because I need to learn all I can learn from you guys about what you need and how, specialty crops and the direct market side of things and those challenges are what I need to learn about, need to know about, so that I can filter all this back through to try to long-term make things, hopefully, I'm gonna say better, different products, new products, improved products going forward. So Lisa, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to come up, and I look forward to questions, conversation, feedback from the group in a little bit.
Wonderful. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Kevin.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Julie Jacque, and one of the 2 program specialists in Vermont FSA. And due to retirements and lots of things happening in the federal government, myself and Eileen Powers are interim specialists in Massachusetts. We've been here for about a year. And I have ties to Massachusetts. I live in Sunderland, Mass, and grew up in Amherst on a small orchard and dairy farm, and still have some cows today that I play around with. And my program areas are program eligibility, price support, and our safety net programs. I've been with the agency for 26 years or so, and started out as a summer intern here in Massachusetts and have kind of climbed my way up through the ranks. I'm happy to be here today talking about NAP, and happy that our sister agency with RMA is here with us to share our products that we have. So as we talk about the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, or NAP, there's some other ways the program's been referenced over the years that aren't so nice, but I do believe in the product that we have, and why is because, as Kevin talked about, the list of crops that RMA offers, anything that's not on that list kind of falls into the NAP program. So it is specialty crop galore, and anything and everything that growers grow and market, we look to figure out a way to cover that. And some important conversation that I've heard, over the last few years is, how do you look at NAP and RMA and other mitigation and risk management products to kind of have a disaster plan in place for, you know, for weathering those financial situations that come with extreme weather. And, you know, at the region, and particularly Vermont, we are still kind of wrapping up 2023 and 2024 flooding. We were very heavily impacted in Vermont and here too with the 2023 flooding, and it brought out a lot of wish list items of how to make our products a little bit better, but really a lot of service providers in Vermont and with our Department of Ag and all of our extension services, how do we help identify the resources for you to have that really good disaster plan in place? Okay, so what we have to offer again is like car insurance or homeowners insurance or peppers as the new coverage level option here. Our policy is, there is a policy, it's called our basic provisions that spell out all of the rules of the program. And it can be located on our website, or a county office can provide you with a printed version. It's dull reading, of course, but it has all the rules and spelled out pretty well in the document. Right. So another website that is important for resources for kind of recovery and protection is our farmers.gov website, which it has, you know, a plethora of information. If you haven't been there, I encourage you to visit there. We also have access to the premium calculator for now coverage levels, and below you can also see the link to our basic provisions is located there. So this is a one sheet that we kind of keep around in our county offices. It's kind of summarizing our crop table, where we have our sales closing dates, the production reporting dates, and acreage reporting dates by type of crop. And again, those are really important. And we're here today really kind of focusing on the March 15th kind of sales closing date for our spring seeded crops. We do have a requirement to match RMA dates as much as possible. So again, being that sister agency relationship, we follow many of the RMA rules as well. When you have coverage in place, you should be receiving a quarterly summary mailed to you with these important dates on it as well. So if you're not getting them, let us know, because you should. Again, kind of talking high level, there are some administrative fees that are in place, and as demonstrated here on the slide, we have $325 per crop with a 3-crop maximum, if you will, if you're farming in one county. And we also offer various coverage levels. So we have our basic catastrophic coverage level, and then we also have our buy-up coverage. And what I've highlighted here is a really important kind of certification. We have lots of participation under this certification where we waive the service fee, and we also offer 50% premium discount for folks that certify to being a beginning farmer, which is again up to 10 years. If you are certifying as a limited resource grower, if you are socially disadvantaged group, that's again identified on the certification form. And also, it says veteran farmers, but it's really beginning veteran farmers. So if you've been out of the service it's like within your first 10 years of being out of the service, we can honor that discount and service fee waiver. And that's kind of what I had talked about. Again, free basic coverage and 50% of the premiums. And I jotted down in our years in Massachusetts of 2023 through 2025, FSA has paid out about $2 million in NAP indemnities, and let's see, it was 1.5 million of that was under the catastrophic coverage. So there's growing participation in the buy-up, but letting people know that you know, those buy-up options do make a difference in receiving 100% of the price versus 55% of the price. And an addition in, I think in 2025 was our underserved certification form changed to include basically automatic coverage in NAP. If you are working with NRCS or coming into to FSA for another reason, and you're certifying on this form one of those categories, we've built in coverage with the policy or basic provisions link in it to opt in or out of the coverage. If you do not check the box, you are in. So, so this was to, again, try to mitigate ad hoc disaster assistance and waiting years for assistance through, you know, another bill being passed. This is trying to, again, get people covered ahead of time. And again, high level, a lot of people maybe don't realize what the coverage levels mean in the percentages. So I just kind of put that in, and using that, you know, kind of car insurance type language of your yield is covered at this percentage, and you have to kind of have a deductible of a yield loss before it will pay out or kick in. So just a few slides on that I won't, again, need, but I think it's something to work with your county office or take a peek on that calculator on the farmers.gov website to see what does it mean for you. If I want just the free basic coverage, what does that potentially equate for a payment versus how much is it going to cost me to get a little bit more coverage. And again, a lot of the times we see the premiums with having that added price option of having a buy-up coverage and paying at 100% of the established price versus 55%. You may have a small premium or not so small premium, but the benefit most of the time pays for that increased cost. So a question I get a lot is, where do the yields and prices come from? And so under the NAP program, our individual state FSA county state committees review and set the county average yields, and we also set the county average prices. And we have a hierarchy of where we're supposed to look for that data. And, you know, starting with RMA, we need to match as much as possible. And then we also look to ag statistics. I look for regional marketing. Where are our regional markets? You know, in the AMS, you know, Boston market reports, we can kind of look in there and try to find kohlrabi or some unique crop that we can't always find pricing for. Grower information is important. So we use all of that data to come up with really a state average. So Vermont is different than Massachusetts for our prices and yields that we're setting. But, we should be in the same ballpark, because there are quite a few similar markets that our source information would come from. And the other feature that I wanted to share with the group is that the Massachusetts State Committee has, for 2026, incorporated an organic market price and a direct market price. So there's additional features in the pricing that if you're looking to talk about crop coverage for the March 15th date, you want to check in and look at those calculators online, because the organic price can also be used for your catastrophic coverage. You don't have to have buy-up to request the organic price, but you do need to have buy-up to use the direct market price and demonstrate that your market, retail market versus wholesale market's a little more diverse. So we can talk about that price option. I haven't worked much in the direct market policies. People tend to prefer the organic pricing. In Vermont, we have a lot of organic growers that use that pricing option.
Do you have to be certified organic?
We do have a certified organic yield and price, and well, I won't say, I'll say price, and a transitional yield and price. So there are, if you're transitioning acres, we can talk about that too. Yep. It does, I'm just thinking of, we do have access to the organic data market, the integrity database, to see who folks are certified organic. And so we can, use that information to show organic. And this was just a screenshot of, again, a summary of the coverage levels. And I'm just going to catch up to make sure I don't miss my notes. I updated the slide last night to just show, again, the diversity of crops that we have currently in the crop table for Worcester County, from herbs to, I love saying kohlrabi, I think, because it's just such a unique crop, but leeks, lettuces, and those, so the first column, the 8933 is the county yield per acre, which again is a state yield, and then 7762 is the cents per pound that the county committees kind of established as yields and prices. The other, the state committee has just been appointed. They had their first kind of orientation meeting yesterday. I'm going to be asking them, if you see the 01 in the middle, Massachusetts has just a single planting period to offer. In Vermont, we've kind of diversified to having, like for lettuces or greens, for instance, we have 6 planting periods, and kind of setting up some review and analysis of the planting dates. Again, make sure we're lined up with RMA, but also what are our growers doing here to offer a little bit better coverage. And the causes of loss, I think there's one kind of big difference between RMA and FSA. NAP is we do not cover wildlife damage. So I think some of the RMA policies say they do allow that, but we are weather related only. So those are kind of our reasons, our causes of loss. Okay. We cannot cover market disruptions and failure to employ good management practices. And again, is this long list of weather events that have happened over the last few years. How is it best to come up with that plan? farmers have said in the past, they didn't think the crop was affected that much or minimize the need to call FSA or the crop insurance. They didn't want to seem bothersome to report something going on with their crop. So if you suspect something is wrong, reporting it to the office is, really important, and the timeliness of reporting it is really important. And even if the crop ends up being okay in the end, having that report of the damage up front is really essential. And as you see,
At least there's some return on your money, that somebody actually came off the farm and did something. Looked at something.
documented, sure.
Are these events that have been declared disasters by the FSA, or can it be localized?
These were just farmer reports of what happened on their crop. So, right, we don't have to wait, and when you're in the NAP program, you don't have to wait for a secretarial or disaster designation. This is, you have coverage and you experienced one of these weather events. Yep. You'll also know disease and heat are kind of secondary reasons for loss, so they have to be tied to a weather event. So if it was really rainy and flooding and super hot that exacerbated the disease, then we can kind of talk about that. But we kind of have a primary and a secondary loss conditions. Okay. So the long story short, don't be afraid to start a claim, even if it amounts to nothing. The loss calculations for NAP purposes are based on the acreage of the crop planted, the producer's approved yield, and then the net production of the crop for that year. We look at the coverage level elected, and then we also look at the average market price for the crop that's elected. And sending loss adjusters out to evaluate the crop loss after the weather event. And we can also use loss adjusters to verify a growing season conditions. And just a few definitions. The approved yield is your average of your production history, and that average is 4 to 10 years of production. We have the requirement for records to be provided to build that production history or average for you. And we look to have that updated by the time you do the subsequent year crop reporting. I think something we've implemented in Vermont to try to get acreage reporting better served for our producers and growers is there is a measurement service fee. We can come out and measure your acreage with GPS units or wheels if that's helpful for you. It also helps get us out on the farm and learn your operation too. Okay. So it does cost, but if it means having more accurate acreage, that's really important under the NAP program. So the process is, again, March 15th is our big date. We do have perennial coverage and in the fall, perennials is November 20th, which matches the date. Our aquaculture, there are coverages that are not in the shellfish pilot program, so we have a lot of activity in that. Those are kind of earlier in the year as well. Check in before March 15th, and of course acreage reporting is really key. Come and see us in the summer. I think the other thing we are trying to train Massachusetts staff on is, and growers, don't rely just on July 15th. That's great if you're maybe a one crop grower, but if you're planting stuff in May and June and July and August, we don't want you to just come in July, because we're missing what's after, and we want to capture what has not, if it hasn't been harvested yet. So crop reporting is really, really important. And it's that certification of the planted acreage that helps show true yield, right? What did you actually have yield per acre, and that location when we need to send a loss adjuster out. So that's really important. We can take crop reports a multitude of ways. If you have a planting plan that you're working on now, or sketching out what your grow rotations are and stuff like that, we can use those. And what do you have to help us get that acreage recorded correctly? If this is just what a veggie grower is part of their farm operation total, the FSA 578 crop report summarizes all of those planting periods and timeframes and square feet into a farm operation total, which by planting period in this case, this could help you decide, oh, that didn't work out so well, we're not going to do that next year, or this worked out really great. How can that acreage report help you make better planning and finance decisions? Again, losses are required to be reported to the county office within 72 hours of when they become apparent, not necessarily when the storm happened. But again, just be in touch with the office and decide what you're going to do with the crop going forward. Okay. And again, we would institute the sending a loss adjuster out as needed based on what your plan is with the crop. Once you've kind of finished harvesting and we've sent the loss adjuster out for a final inspection, we can work on production and processing that payment. And we have some kind of tight timelines to clean up that claim. So again, be in touch with that county office to help meet those deadlines. And I know with, as Kevin mentioned, records, how can we have better records? And I'm kind of helping out in Massachusetts and learning a lot about aquaculture and inventory reporting. How can, what's your system to decide, what's your moneymaker? What are you documenting on your taxes? How do we help you formulate a better record keeping that need to be submitted? Sure, yeah. Okay. It's difficult, again, without the crop report, without your records, it's hard to be able to give you the best coverage and product. Okay. Right. So if you don't have records, again, we can help you try to find a system to track them. We've seen everything from a clipboard by the cash register or the pack shed to a paper towel. They've taken all sorts of records as long as we can, come up with that number and document what you did. It's really helpful. I think a lot of our sugar makers have a boiling calendar in their sugar house, and they just write the gallons of grade that they boiled. That's a contemporaneous record that is acceptable. So if there's something you can come up with, it's really helpful. Again, different examples of records we've seen over the years that can help substantiate your record, production history and your claim. Okay. Another kind of misconception is NAP is designed as a safety net product, not as a profit replacer. So we kind of talk about cost of production and not that revenue, bottom line. So, we do encourage people to look to the revenue products if that's something that that they need. And you can also have them in tandem, right? Is that right, Kevin? You can have a revenue policy and NAP in place at the same time.
So, I mean, if there's a crop that's got a program in that county, then there is no NAP on that specific crop.
Right.
But if you've got a crop that doesn't have a program, doesn't have a policy at all, yes, you can have NAP on those crops.
Yep.
Insurance on
Right.
those.
And revenue, you can have NAP on revenue. And so So we can talk more about that on the panel. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And this is my information. Again, I encourage you to visit farmers.gov and welcome to give me a call or email and visit more about that.
So you're specifically talking about, like, can they have like whole farm?
Yes.
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 Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi. So thanks for having me. When Lisa and Clem first reached out to me and described this program to me and invited me to be on the panel, I said no. Because when I think about risk management, it's not really something the department does. And then I started thinking about risk management with lowercase r and lowercase m, and very much of what we do is about helping farmers figure out how to avoid risk in the first place, not through products like the insurance programs that you've been hearing about, but very much through how can we help farmers be more resilient and be prepared for what comes, whether it's a disaster or a weather disaster or market changes or whatever it may be. You all know the variables that you're facing every day. And so we try to stop problems from happening in the first place. We try to help farmers find ways to do that. We have done some small disaster relief work. That's not something that's common. It's been mentioned a couple of times back in 2023, the year of the frost, the freeze and the floods. We did have a $20 million program called the Natural Disaster Recovery Program that my colleague over there, Laura, ran and made sure somehow we managed within 3-4 months after those floods to get $20 million out to farmers. And that's never happened before in Massachusetts. And then some of you, I think, are aware of what we hope is an upcoming program for disaster relief to cover weather-related disasters in 23 and 24 through a block grant that's coming to us from FSA. I can talk more about that, a little bit more about that, but there's still a lot of details being worked out. Essentially, we're hoping it's going to be launched in the next few months. We're still working on details of that, so don't hold me to anything that I say on it today. But what we have proposed to FSA is a program that will cover crops, infrastructure, timber, future economic losses, so losses of perennial rootstock, and some bare ground practices. There are very significant limitations to this. We can cover things that FSA cannot cover, or that FSA does not cover. Didn't you just hear from Julie that they have a program that covers all the crops that FSA doesn't cover? Yes, crops is the one exception. I can get into a little more detail about what we're hoping that's going to be. It's going to be a complicated program, and there's no way around that. We're dealing with 2 different government bureaucracies through this program, but we're working on the application process right now, and we're going to try and make it as straightforward as possible. Like both Kevin and Julie talked about, a lot is going to come down to what records you have. And so even while the notice for that hasn't been posted yet, while there's still snow on the ground and you've got a little more time indoors, this is a good time for you to be pulling records together about things that you lost in 23 and 24, because anything you've got will help with that program. And then policy advocacy is another thing. And again, Lisa mentioned this, the commissioner is on the board of the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, NASDA, and was instrumental in redrafting that organization's policy about what they advocate for at the federal level around crop insurance programs to make sure that they're really serving more small and diversified farms. So that's all I'm going to say about disaster relief and policy advocacy. What I want to focus on is mitigation, and that's the department's programs are all about mitigating and helping farmers survive. The statistic I usually shout out that most of you probably live on a day-to-day basis is that on average, Massachusetts farms earn 95 cents for every dollar they spend on production. I'm not an economist. My understanding is that's not good. So farmers in Massachusetts are working second jobs. They've got a spouse or a partner who works outside the farm. And that's how they make ends meet. And so we've got programs that try to support farmers in a range of ways to help them cover that gap. And so starting out, there's tax relief programs. You're all probably familiar with Chapter 61A, short version of that. Property taxes are a little bit lower if you're enrolled in that program and you're actively farming your land. Dairy farmer tax credit helps to close the gap between the cost of production and the mailbox price of milk. The state commits $8 million to that program every year, depending upon need. We've never needed less than what's being asked for from dairy farmers every year. Then there's smaller ones like the tax credit for cranberry bog renovation. And some of you may have seen the governor's budget that she just released a couple of weeks ago proposes an additional tax credit for farmers who donate food to your local food bank or pantry or school or whatever it may be. So this would be up to $5,000 of a tax credit. The idea being, how do we get more fresh food into the emergency food system? How do we help farmers who maybe are letting crops stay out in the field because they don't have a market for it and it's less expensive to plow them under than it is to harvest them. So keeping an eye on that. It's not in place yet, but as the budget makes its way through the legislative process, we hope to see that pass this year. We try to help farmers with markets, obviously connecting you and the things you grow to people that want to eat them. You're familiar with the Mass Grown and Fresher program. We're one of the first states to do something like this, primarily focuses on direct-to-consumer sales. We also have the Mass Grown Exchange now, more for wholesale growing. If you've got an extra pallet full of peaches that you weren't able to sell and you list them on the website there, you'll find other markets for them. We do a lot of work with farm to school and farm to institution sales. We even have a team member who helps connect growers and other food producers to markets overseas. And Commissioner Randall's been very active in that as well. She travels often overseas to try to find new markets. A lot of supply chain support, primarily through grant programs that I'll talk about in a minute. We have a farmers market program. And then we're constantly trying to get the word out to everybody and anybody who will listen about how awesome farmers are in Massachusetts and how important it is to support them. And so we do that through really active social media campaigns, and we do it through the newsletter. Hopefully you all get the farm and market report. And then a range of technical assistance, everything from bees to aquaculture to dairy. We have a very robust produce safety team. Ask Ben everything you want to know about produce safety. We work with pesticide applicators. We do licensing and exams. We provide resources to folks that are doing on-farm composting. Again, all things that we're trying to do to help farms be sustainable and more resilient. So to talk about the grants, and we have about a dozen grant programs, and they have all grown up over the years in response to particular needs. And so, depending upon priorities of the administration or needs that we're hearing from farmers, we shaped grant programs to try to best address those needs. So the first thing we tend to support, going based on the amount of resources we have on a consistent basis, APR, the Agricultural Preservation Restriction Program. Some of you may be familiar with this. We purchase a permanent easement on land, paying the farmer the value of the development rights. The farmer holds the agricultural rights, and that keeps the farm in production permanently. It's a deed restriction, so the land can never be converted to another use. Farm Viability Enhancement Program works with farms providing technical assistance, business technical assistance and planning in exchange for a short-term covenant on their land, 10 or 15 years. And at the end of the process, they get a grant for infrastructure improvements on their farm. And stewardship assistance and restoration on APRs is for farmers that have purchased APRs that have had damage to the resource through no fault of their own. So the previous owner, there was a spill, there was trash left behind, things got overgrown, whatever it may be. We want to help them restore that land back to productive use. We also have a few small programs that support practices, particular management practices on farmland. I shouldn't say small. Climate Smart program is one of our bigger ones. Financial incentives that really help farmers proactively address risks and strengthen their economic and environmental resiliency. So this is a lot of energy efficiency, a lot of renewable projects, a lot of equipment that helps farmers protect soil health. And then the cranberry renovation and enhancement program, which essentially helps the cranberry industry focus on using less energy and protecting the land more. I should go back to CSAP also. I forgot that CSAP this year rolled into it the composting program, which helps farmers with composting equipment and practices. FSIG has been a big program and it's gotten a lot of attention. This came up in 2020 at the height of COVID. This was a program when food stopped flowing real well, and the state put up quite a bit of money then. And the program was run by EEA for a while and now is run by MDAR. It's not just for farmers, it's for folks all along the food supply chain, all the way from producers, so farmers and fishers, to processors, to distributors, to food pantries and schools, all to look at the supply chain and how do we support it in service of the producers primarily. So we're not giving grants to Applebee's. Nothing against Applebee's, but we're trying where we do give grants to non-farm entities. It's to processors, producers, distributors that are supporting local farmers by helping them access markets. Urban Ag Grant Program obviously goes to growers in urban areas, particularly ones that do community development and education work along with their growing. The Food Ventures Grant Program is for retailers and processors and distributors in underserved areas that try to increase access to locally produced, locally grown food to their communities. MEGA is a grant program for infrastructure for beginning farmers, and the Food Safety Improvement Program helps farms that need to comply with the Food Safety Modernization Act, helps them bring older equipment up to speed, and also provides it connects them with the produce safety team so that they learn how to use it, and that gives them additional access to markets as well, since being up to code is really what gets you into some of the larger markets. And that's our mission. I'll say in general, I really flew through that because I know we're running out of time and I want to make sure we have time for questions and answers. In general, our RFRs, requests for responses for all of our grants, get posted anytime starting now. I think you'll start seeing some in the next few weeks, and close usually in May or so. Like Kevin said, I encourage you to look at the deadline and then subtract several days from that deadline and pretend like you got to get it in 3 days before. Not just because of the record keeping and all of that, but because we've just had a lot of very sad people who click send at 3:59 for a 4 o'clock deadline, and things still take a few minutes to process and all of that. So keep that in mind. We try to do webinars for most of our grant programs. So when we post the RFR, there's opportunities to ask questions and get a little bit of a personal walkthrough of the process. There's a green brochure on the table in the back there that lists all of these programs, has QR codes for all of them, and the website is very, very detailed on all of these things. You can see past applications or past RFRs if you go on to the state's Combis program. So if you're interested in a program, you want to see what the application looked like in previous years, they don't change that much from year to year. You can do that. And there was something else, but it just went entirely out of my head. So I'm going to stop there so we have time to answer questions. I don't have a slide with my contact information, but I'm quite easy to find. I'm all over the website. Thanks.
Thank you.